For years, a name moved quietly through the margins of power. It appeared in flight logs, court filings, sealed agreements, and whispered conversations. It surfaced briefly in headlines, then receded again into silence. According to records, Jeffrey Epstein was not merely a wealthy financier with a troubled criminal history. He was a node in a much larger network, one defined by access, influence, and unanswered questions. Reports suggest that Epstein cultivated proximity to power with unusual precision. From the beginning, his rise did not follow a traditional path. Documents indicate that his early career lacked the conventional markers associated with extreme wealth. There were no clear records of long-standing firms, no transparent client lists, and no public accounting of how his fortune was built. Yet, despite these gaps, Epstein gained entree into elite circles across finance, politics, academia, and royalty. According to records, he moved comfortably among individuals whose decisions shaped institutions and policies. Photographs, guest lists, and correspondence show repeated interactions with figures of global importance. In many cases, these connections were not hidden. They were visible, even casual. What remained unclear was the nature of the relationships and the basis of the trust extended to him. Over time, reports began to surface, describing allegations that contradicted Epstein's public image. Court documents reveal patterns of behavior that raised serious concerns. Yet, again and again, these concerns appeared to dissipate without consequence. Complaints were filed, investigations opened, and then quietly resolved or abandoned. According to legal filings, some cases ended not with trials, but with confidential agreements that limited public scrutiny. One such agreement, often referenced in records, effectively halted further prosecution at a critical moment. The details were sealed, the scope narrowly defined, and the implications far-reaching. Documents indicate that this resolution shielded not only Epstein, but potentially others whose names never entered formal charges. The reasons for this outcome remain a subject of debate, but the result was clear. A moment when answers might have emerged instead reinforced silence. Reports suggest that during this period, Epstein's access to influential spaces did not diminish. In some cases, it appeared to expand. According to flight records, he traveled frequently, often with guests whose identities later drew attention. Properties linked to him became gathering places, described in testimonies as locations where boundaries dissolved and oversight was absent. Survivor accounts, later made public through court filings, describe a system that operated with structure and repetition. These accounts suggest recruitment methods, patterns of control, and the use of wealth as leverage. According to these testimonies, silence was not accidental. It was cultivated through intimidation, payments, and the implicit power of connections. For years, these accounts existed largely outside mainstream awareness. When they did surface, they were often framed as isolated incidents. Documents indicate that broader patterns were overlooked. Questions about who enabled the system, who ignored warning signs, and who benefited from silence were rarely pursued in depth. The role of institutions remains one of the most troubling aspects. According to reports, law enforcement agencies received complaints but failed to act decisively. Prosecutorial decisions, later scrutinized, revealed unusual deference. Records show that victims were not always informed of critical developments, limiting their ability to challenge outcomes. Media coverage also followed a familiar pattern. Initial stories generated attention, followed by long periods of quiet. According to analysts, legal pressure and the complexity of the case contributed to this cycle. In some instances, reporting was constrained by settlements that restricted what could be said publicly. As time passed, Epstein's name became synonymous with unanswered questions. How did he maintain such influence? Why did safeguards fail repeatedly? According to observers, the answers lie not in a single decision, but in a culture that prioritized discretion over accountability. When renewed investigations began years later, they reopened wounds that had never healed. Court documents unsealed during this period revealed new details, including correspondence and financial records. These materials suggested a broader network than previously acknowledged. Yet even then, many names were redacted, many paths unexplored. According to records, Epstein's arrest marked a turning point. For the first time, the possibility of a full accounting seemed within reach. Yet events soon took another turn. His death, officially ruled a suicide, immediately generated controversy. Reports cited failures in supervision, malfunctioning cameras, and deviations from protocol. Each explanation raised further questions. The timing intensified public skepticism. According to commentators, the moment when Epstein might have provided testimony against others coincided with the moment his voice was permanently silenced. Official investigations acknowledged errors, but stopped short of identifying accountability beyond procedural failures. The consequences of that night extended far beyond one individual. With Epstein gone, many questions could no longer be answered directly. According to legal experts, cases against potential associates became more difficult. Evidence that might have been corroborated through testimony remained incomplete. Documents released afterward continued to hint at scale without providing resolution. Financial transactions, property records, and communications painted fragments of a larger picture. Yet without a central figure to interrogate, those fragments resisted assembly. For survivors, the silence carried a different weight. According to statements, justice delayed had become justice denied. While some civil cases proceeded, they did so within limits shaped by earlier decisions. The sense that powerful forces remained untouched persisted. The broader implications extend beyond one case. According to institutional reviews, Epstein's trajectory exposed vulnerabilities in systems designed to protect the vulnerable and constrain the powerful. These systems, when confronted with wealth and influence, appeared to bend. Questions about accountability remain unresolved. Who made decisions that curtailed investigations? Who intervened behind closed doors? According to records, many of these interactions occurred out of public view, shielded by legal privilege and confidentiality. The Epstein Files, as they are often called, represent more than documents. They symbolize a boundary between what is known and what remains hidden. Each unsealed page answers one question while raising several more. In the absence of definitive conclusions, patterns become the focus. Patterns of access without transparency. Patterns of complaints without consequences. Patterns of silence sustained over decades. According to analysts, these patterns are not unique. They reflect a broader dynamic in which power insulates itself. When wealth intersects with influence, oversight weakens. When reputations are at stake, institutions hesitate. The story does not end with Epstein. It continues in the unanswered questions that linger. Who else knew? Who chose not to act? What mechanisms allowed this system to persist? As time moves forward, the risk is not only forgetting the details, but normalizing the silence. According to historians, unresolved cases shape future behavior. They teach lessons, whether intended or not, about what consequences can be avoided. The Epstein Files remain open in the public imagination, if not always in courtrooms. Each new document release rekindles attention, reminding observers that the full truth has yet to emerge. Power, once exposed, rarely relinquishes itself willingly. Silence, once established, is difficult to break. and missing answers have a way of echoing long after the events that produced them. What remains is a record incomplete by design, shaped by decisions made far from scrutiny. According to records, those decisions mattered. They determined whose voices were heard and whose were dismissed. The legacy of the case lies not only in what is known, but in what remains concealed. Until those gaps are addressed, the story continues, unresolved, suspended between evidence and absence. In that space, questions endure, waiting for answers that may never fully come.